it's pretty intimidating to follow Rod. You know, a former football player, a big guy who is funny, visionary, but I think we might be up to the challenge because Calvin, you know, you and I have talked multiple times. The story that BGE has is really impressive. The story that Exelon has is very impressive. You have 200 years of history at BGE. Calvin Butler, the CEO of Baltimore Gas and Electric, but it's what you're doing now, and this change that you're focusing on through your culture, through your core. That's really, really exciting, and I'm so grateful that you're up here with me right now.
Chris, always good to see you. And just for the record, when I did come in and I saw Rod on the panel right before me, I thought about turning around. I really did, because I admire him so much, and I admire his leadership and what he's doing, not only for the industry, but what he's doing at Entergy. And you talk about an innovative leader and a thoughtful leader. He exemplifies that. But you know, it truly is, from my point of view, just a great time to be in our industry. And I appreciate you guys having me back. That's always a good sign when you're invited back to someplace. So that was good. And at the same time, it's an opportunity to continue to tell not only an industry story, but I'm so proud of what BGE is doing and how we're doing it, and really how we are leaning in to make an impact, not only in the industry, but across the communities that we serve. So thank you for having me, and good to see you again, too.
It's great to see you, Calvin.
Thank you.
So this is the Energy Thought Summit, and you know, we're thinking a lot about energy, but I like to think a little bit broader, and so I'm going to start off with a question outside of energy.
Okay.
What are you reading right now?
Outside of the Masters highlights, yeah, you know, it's really twofold. One, reading is, you know, we all have it. Reading is kind of like my quiet place. You know, when you're traveling or you're moving around, that's how I disconnect. But once in a while, I'll get into some books. My favorite book that I've read over the last year is the Book of Joy. And I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but it's an interview of the Dalai Lama and Bishop Desmond Tutu. And essentially what it talks about is just living a peaceful life. How do you sit back and be thankful for what life is offering, and your perspective really sets it up, and how two people from different parts of the world developed a friendship because their spirits were just aligned in how they're giving and giving back and making an impact on the world. That's one. And last week I started the book. I was at an EEI meeting, and I believe his name is Tom Goodwin. He has this book called Digital Darwinism. And essentially what it's talking about is disruption in today's world. And the bottom line of the book, and I'll paraphrase it for those of you who haven't read it and don't want to buy it, it all goes back into how old school industries have a very difficult time changing. And you put on this marketing and salesman approach on the outside, but at the core of what you do is still the same. And you say you're being innovative and you're changing, but it goes to say sometimes you have to break it to move forward. And then he also talked about how the most innovation is occurring in developing countries because they're starting now. I think he gave an example, and Kim Curry, my chief of staff, reinforced it. He goes, the best drone technology right now is happening in Rwanda. One, out of necessity and need, but two, is they were starting from a way of, if we were going to do this, how would we do it for the first time? And that's real. And so I think about that in terms of our sector, the energy sector, and what we're doing is that we're pushing ourselves and our employees to think out of the box. But what I love about BGE is you have 30 to 40, 50-year employees in any given meeting, and they're so committed to that level of service. The challenge, you have 30 to 40 to 50-year employees in every meeting, and it's very difficult for them to step out of it and say, why should we do things differently? This has been working for 50 years. We've been in business for 200 years, and here you come in saying we have to do it different. That's the struggle, but that's also the opportunity. Back on the slide, you see this. That is the first gas lamp in the country. BGE was first gas utility in the United States. That's right there on Baltimore and Holiday Streets in Baltimore, still working to date. First gas lamp. But it goes to show you how that innovation, we were founded by an artist, Rembrandt Peale. He wasn't trying to create a gas company. He was trying to highlight his art at night. Got together, created.
It's innovation, right?
It's innovation. So I tell people all the time, we've been innovating for 204 years. How do we keep it going? But that's the difference in us.
Well, and you touched on so many things, but it does come back to culture. Yes. You can innovate out of that culture. And the culture that BGE exemplifies is one that's based on safety, reliability, customer service, diversity, inclusion. How do each one of those components support each other and drive forward so that you can deliver on those business objectives?
Oh, great question. And let me just, it all has to be premised on delivering value. If it's not delivering value for our customers, the question always comes to, why are you doing it? And if you're not asking that question, you're setting yourself up to not fail, but to be less impactful for what you're doing. And then you say, okay, we think we're doing a good job. And when I use this, my team probably gets tired of it. I said, we can make anything sound good when we're meeting with one another. And it is the best idea. I look at David Milton, our director of marketing. I said, David has the best ideas when he's talking to his team. But then how do you test that? And it's amazing when you bring in an outside group, they're like, why are you doing that? I have no interest. And we challenge ourselves, but that's different for us. But then it goes down to those core values that you just mentioned, from safety to reliability, customer experience, diversity and inclusion, our financial impact and innovation, and they're all interwoven. But I heard Rod say this, and it's so true. We don't get a lot of credit for that. That's what the customers expect. When was the last time you came into your home and you flipped on the light and you said, thanks, BGE? You don't do it. You don't do it. So what are you doing differently to show customers that you're making their experience better? And then what are the measures? And for one of our industry measures, and I got to brag on the team, we've been ranked in 2017 and 2018. J.D. Power recognized us as the #1 utility in the East for large companies for our gas customers. In 2018, we received the #1 utility according to customers for electric. So that says, okay, we're doing something right, but how do we continue to try to get better? So that's a measure for us, but it always comes back to, are we delivering value, and how are we delivering that value?
That's a great point. It's something that Rod mentioned as well in his talk about outcomes. And what's been discussed multiple times this week, but I do really want to get your perspective on it and the BGE perspective on it, is with our industry changing so rapidly, how can BGE, how can utilities in general make sure that they're focused on serving their customers, as opposed to just simply using technology to modernize for the sake of having some cool tech?
Yeah, that's the toughest part, is that I think Rod said, you don't want to be the first, but you can't be the last. And you have to articulate the why. And, that slide behind you kind of captures some of the why, but let me put it in perspective for you. We installed smart grid across our entire service territory, the smart meters and so forth, a few years ago. We completed it for all of our customers. That technology enabled us to do so many things. And my view is that by giving customers a sense of control over what they're doing and how they do it, that's something that they've wanted. So I'll give you a couple of examples. We were one of the first in the industry to put on what we call CVR, control voltage regulators, where our customers don't even know when we're adjusting the volume, but it's saving them money. And if we can do that with technology and not impact their lives in a negative way and save them money, that's powerful. Then we sit back and say, okay, what else are we going to do with the smart grid? We're going to enable our Smart Energy Savers program, and you'll notice we branded our whole campaign under David's leadership around smart energy. Why? Because we want our customers to think of us a little different very different than just your utility company. We want to become their energy advisor. Which technologies do we use? How do we use it? Think about calling BGE. Hey, I'm thinking about a solar panel, a solar roof on my house. What do you think, BGE? I'm thinking about this fuel cell. What do you think, BGE? If we can move up that value chain with our customers, that's impactful. Because at the end of the day, the numbers that we're talking about, we've already distributed over $570 million in rebates for our customers to buy energy efficiency products. We have saved our customers over $300 million in just participating in our energy efficiency programs, allowing us to adjust their thermostat or them proactively adjusting their thermostat on heat days, very hot days. That's real savings. I'll tell you this, the number one thing I get when customers I'm out, we have this program where you probably all your utilities do, where you get compared to your neighbors on energy usage. People are competitive. they like, dude, I'm not even home and I'm not the first on my block. But it goes to show you they're knowledgeable, they want to participate and they want to engage, they just don't know how. And that's the opportunity that we have. So technology is the enabler, but what we do with that technology is really making the difference in their lives.
Speaking of making a difference in people's lives, we've talked so much this week about energy delivery, the transition, the future of that. But one of the things that really strikes me about BGE, about your vision, about your leadership, is this idea of creating a utility that's at the core and the center of a community, a region, a city, whatever it is. How can utilities do more? How is BGE doing more to be that vital center of a community with economic development and leadership?
Well, first off, thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that, because as we were saying, we've said before, we've been very intentional about our efforts. I think as a utility, we have an obligation, one, to serve, but no one, that service has always been the last resort for your electricity and your gas. But I said, let's define serve even broader and how we go about doing that. We've defined service as really having an impact on the community much broader than we've ever had before. 7 years ago, I've been CEO for 5, and it's been an amazing journey. 7 years ago, if you'd have asked us as a company, how are we doing? Everyone would have said, great. But yet we've taken it to the next level. How have we done that? All 3,200 employees have said, we understand we have a role to play in the communities, the 10 counties, the city of Baltimore, across Central Maryland. And what we have tried to do is define what that looks like. And that comes from our hiring, our supplier diversity programs. It comes from our recruitment. It comes from volunteering hours. Our employees last year volunteered over 26,000 hours in the community, and we encouraged them to do so. We gave over $5.5 million in just corporate philanthropy. But it also goes, we're sitting on boards. Every vice president, it's required they sit on at least 2 non-for-profit boards. And what you have behind you here is we do a study every 2 years that we charter out or contract out with the Economic Alliance of Greater Baltimore to say, what is BGE measure, please, for us, our economic impact? And what you see is that although we have only 3,200 employees, we're indirectly or directly responsible for over 11,200 jobs, with the economic commitment to the region, the state, of $5.4 billion. That's real impact. But people don't think of us that way. Our employees didn't think of us that way. And when you put those numbers out in front of people, they're like, this is real. We do have a role, and I'm proud of what we've done.
It's a really inspiring vision, and I don't think that it has to be unique to BGE.
No.
This is something that all utilities, whether you're a small rural electric cooperative or a municipal or an IOU, can really focus on doing this.
Right.
And one of those key ways, and you touched on this, is is how you develop your workforce. It is reaching each one of those 3,200 employees, simultaneously challenging them to improve their customers, and to improve their community, interact with their customers, and ultimately touch on those business outcomes that really makes the difference, right?
That's right. I mean, so think about it, is that BGE is part of a larger organization. Our parent company is Exelon, headquartered in Chicago. We touch over 10 million customers, and that's just on the electric and gas side. 10 million customers across 5 states in the District of Columbia. Our purpose is powering a cleaner and brighter future for our customers and communities. That's a big statement, and how we go about doing it is what we are measured by. You talk about our recruitment. When you look at our workforce, I think it's important that our workforce reflect the communities that we serve. We're headquartered in Baltimore, but we serve the most rural areas of Maryland as well. But when you looked across our workforce, it wasn't representative. So we said, okay, if we're not representative of the city of Baltimore, what can we do? We intentionally partnered with the high schools in Baltimore, 4 technical schools right out the bat, and said, we want to tell high schoolers that BGE is a place for them. And I'm going to share a story with you because I think, for me, it's impactful. So fast forward, we ended up getting these young people who thought, hey, maybe college right now is not for me. And we said, you know what, we'd love to have you work for us. We trained them, internship programs. And to date, we've hired 3 of them in our transmissions and substations and 6 of them in our fleet department. One young lady who was in our fleet department said to us, she goes, I never thought BGE was a place that I could work. I've been so, humbled by this experience. So at the end of the summer, we collect the badges back and so forth, and she goes, may I keep my ID? We said, well, security, we got to get them back. And she goes, and we said, why? She goes, it will remind me when I see it of this experience, because I didn't feel like just an intern. I felt like I belonged. You guys listened to me, and this was meaningful to me. And she said, I didn't know anyone who worked here. So therefore, this meant something. And I tell my team, that's the impact we could have if we embrace it. And she has been a stellar employee in our fleet department, and we're just getting started. But those 4 vocational high schools have been amazing partners, and we're continuing to make that. And then besides that, hiring, we have the most diverse leadership team, BGE, of all of Exelon. I have 17 people on my leadership team, including my chief of staff. 7 Caucasian males, 4 women, 2 of which are African American, 3 Latino men, and 3 African American men. I am so proud of that team, and I always tell people this: if you don't believe diversity works, just look at BGE, because we've had record years 5 years in a row, and I wish I could tell you it was me. It's truly those men and women leading the team, and the diversity and the leadership goes throughout. And it's not just diversity about race and gender, education, background, where you live, what you're bringing to the table. And we encourage that, because one thing about it, you can have a diversity of, the mix, but if you're not being inclusive in what they bring and encouraging conversations, you're done. And I credit the team of just saying, bring everyone's ideas to the table, make them feel wanted, bring their whole selves, and how impactful that's been. And we've been able to do it. And our financial performance, customer satisfaction, community impact, by far has been amazing.
That's certainly a really profound and impactful story, and I'm sure that it comes from the idea that you don't want to just hear yes every time that you sit in a meeting. You want those diversity of voices, that diversity of thought, to make sure that you're challenging and always moving the community forward.
Yeah, I've never had that problem with my team. Yes is generally not the first thing that comes out. But you're right. You create that culture. You create that environment that people feel free to challenge you. But what we do say is that when we leave this room, we're all aligned. We don't have time to second guess. Once we go, and if we're wrong, we'll correct. But we have to move because we are a leader in this community and you cannot drag your feet on making a difference. And we had to start thinking bigger than what we were. And because other companies across the Central Maryland area were looking at what is BGE going to do? How are they doing it? And we had to think of ourselves that way because I don't think previously we thought of ourselves in that way. We thought about our contributions to the community as just something we did. And that was a change for us.
As you leave that meeting all aligned, and then you go out into the community and you focus on economic development, the core of this vision that you have. Let's get somewhat technical here.
Please.
How can a reduced distribution rate or tariff actually lead to positive economic benefits for the community and for BGE?
Well, I think it goes back to our conversation we had earlier, is that if we're going to be your trusted energy advisor, how we go about delivering that value for you is key. I truly believe that giving a customer more control is really powerful. And we have innovated in so many different ways, where we just started a smart home pilot where we're giving customers a smart thermostat. What else are we providing them? We're providing them smart thermostat, a mobile app. We're trying to create different things where they have more direct control. And by keeping their costs down, we empower them to be engaged in the process. You think about it, from our standpoint on our tariff rate, we are doing things that will decrease our peak load by over 80 megawatts. Okay, so if you sit back and look at our energy efficiency programs and everything else we're doing, we're taking our product and encouraging you to use less of it. It's kind of counterintuitive. Yeah. But we see value in other ways, and we believe electrification of our industry is occurring, and we want to partner with you on that journey, and that's really where it comes into play.
As we talk about electrification, and that's been a huge topic of conversation, BGE is clearly, even though you started as a gas company, a leader in the electrification movement. What are some of those projects that you're most proud of when it comes to electrification and e-mobility?
Yeah, that bus. I mean, we are the first utility in the country to have an electric bus fleet. People say, okay, what does that mean? It's used for a couple of reasons. One, we do shuttle employees from A to B. That's one. Two, it's a testing lab. We sit back and say, what are we learning by having this large vehicles on our system? How do they charge? What is the mechanisms for getting it? How are we managing it on our grid? And then three, we're serving as a leader once again in the community where others are asking us, what is that all about? How are you doing this? And that's what's powerful about what we're doing. In addition to that, the electric bus, we have our car fleet, we're changing that over to electric vehicles as well. We use this all the time. We've put charging stations in all of our work locations. Again, understanding what those charging stations are doing to the grid and how they're impacting how we conduct our business, that's powerful. In addition to that, we're utilizing other technologies to sit back and say, how is this going about? But the electrification of the industry is taking place, and we've been working with stakeholders across the state, from charging manufacturers to the commission, environmentalists, and the like. And we're proud that Maryland is moving onto the forefront of electrification. Right here, what you see is what's come out of Public Conference 44 in Maryland. What that is boiling down to, it's allowing the utilities to be a partner in this endeavor. It talks about rebates we're providing to customers to install home charging stations. It also talks about rebates we can do to multi-housing units to install charging stations. It allows us to own, operate, and install over 500 charging stations across our service territory for our customers to use. It also grants us the right to put a time of use pilot for electric vehicles in place. All with this 5-year pilot of saying, what is it going to mean to the industry? More importantly, what is it going to mean to Central Maryland and the state of Maryland? So this is BGE's portion of this, and we're excited. And what I'm most excited about is that it was a collaborative effort of all stakeholders. So it wasn't driven by the utility, wasn't driven by the environmentalists, other charging operators. It was all of us coming together and saying, we have an opportunity here to really lead the country. And I think after this is all said and done, California and New York will be the only ones with more charging stations installed, but the utility ownership and knowledge from it is key.
As we wrap up our conversation today, what are those lessons that all utilities can take back to their various service territories to put themselves at the heart of their community, so that as they're modernizing their business model, as they're bringing on distributed energy resources, battery storage, as we see right here, how can utilities make themselves an essential partner for the community for years to come?
I think a couple of things. Thanks for asking, Chris. I mean, one, continue to push, continue to explore. And for those of you who are not in the utility business, in terms of working for a utility, whether you're consultants or are working with the industry, push the industry to do better, to think bigger, to think broader. You see here, that battery storage unit, go back one, please. Let me tell you a story about that. We knew that Maryland wasn't allowing us to own battery storage, but that didn't stop us. Sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness. Don't tell that to your kids. But we sit back. We installed this at one of our substations, and we weren't trying to sell excess capacity or anything else. We wanted to put it on our system, and what it did, this will allow us to store up to 5 megawatts when it's all built out. And the capital deferment from this battery storage unit, because otherwise we'd have had to build a new substation at the cost of about $50 million for peak demand in this area, for future peak demand. This allowed us to forego that new build, and we don't even know if that peak demand is going to come. When you think about all the energy efficiency and so forth, that saves customers money. And in addition to that, you see the fuel cells that we installed on one of our properties, the solar arrays that the solar panels, all going to learning, being part of it. But what all drives that is that we are also training our future workforce. That's the technology part. But who are you partnering with to make sure you have a workforce that's really ready for delivering on that future? And that's what that talks. It's a company, a not-for-profit called Power 52. And then for those of you who are football fans, 52 is Ray Lewis's old number. And Ray started this foundation, or this not-for-profit, with an energy expert, and what they're doing is they're training young people, or people, on the emerging energy industry, on what they can do to teach them installing solar panels, fuel cells. And BGE was their founding partner to say, you train them, we'll ensure that they get hired somewhere to do exactly that. Again, going into the impact of the community. This is just not a BGE thing. I think utilities across the country have not only the opportunity, but also a significant obligation to be a bigger part. You see here, I credit it to Maya Angelou. Others may think it was, Teddy Roosevelt. But, we talk about this. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's a mantra. We show every day that we care about the communities that we serve. And we're involved in big things, big ideas. Couple of things up here, just give you real numbers. BGE Green Grants, impacting the environmental. We partner with small not-for-profits who are doing environmental projects across our service territory. We give them up to $10,000 in grants. Annually, we give over $350,000 to those organizations. Bright ideas. We hear all the time how teachers have to go out of their own pocket to buy supplies. We started this 2 years ago. We give teachers $500 to $1,000 to go buy supplies, impacting the community. The emergency response and safety grants. I think that's up to, David, maybe $500,000 in just going out to community organizations. Again, you don't think of your utility that way, but at the same time, we know if we're listening, we know what's important to our customers. And I think those are the drivers of why we've received #1 J.D. Power Awards. All the rest of it is expected. I heard Rod say, meet your customers where they're at, and I would take it a step further. As the great Wayne Gretzky would say, meet the puck for where it's going, not where it is, meet it, and we're sitting back anticipating where our customers are going and trying to meet them there. So that, to me, is what we have to do as a utility company, as an energy sector, because we're everywhere. People's lives, it's no longer about just lights and power. Their livelihood is being driven by electricity, and that's the role we can play.
Calvin, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing these thoughts and this vision for putting the utility right at the heart of a vibrant, inclusive community.
Well, and that's why you should love your energy, and it's all good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Calvin Butler, everyone. Thank you.